for the foolish Lema, those that are not well.
Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Okay. Very interesting Gemara tonight, and light. The Mishnah says, we learned that the Kohen Gadol was sequestered. Then at the end of the sequestering, they gave him the Chachamim from the elders of Bezdin. They sat with the Kohen, these Chachamim that were part of the court. And what did they do? The Kohen Lefanav B'Seder Yom, and they would learn with him Parshas Achrei Mos. They would learn with him the Chumash. They would tell this Kohen Gadol, Ishi Kohen Gadol, Mr. Kohen Gadol, our master, Kra Ata B'Ficha. I want you to repeat it with your own mouth, the what we're learning over here, because when you repeat something, you actually remember it better. And they just wanted to make sure that he understood and was learned of what he's supposed to do. So they say, read it with your own mouth. Shema shichachta. Maybe you're going to forget what you're supposed to do. Oi, shema loylamata. Maybe you never went to yeshiva and never learned. That's very strange because you would think the Kohen Gadol is the Gadol Hadar, and they telling him, let's learn Parshas Achrei Mos because maybe you never learned it before in your life. Strange, but we'll see more about that in the Gemara. Erev Yom HaKippurim Shacharis. Erev Yom Kippur on the morning, Mamidin Moisim B'Shar HaMizrach. We would put him by the eastern gate. Uma Avirim Lefonav, and they would pass before him Purim, Eilim, Ukvasim. They would have the cows and the rams and the sheep, those animals, those exact animals that he was supposed to bring up, and they would just pass it before him. So he would be recognized and go it over in his mind, the avodah. It's almost like, you're studying for a big exam and they show you I'm sure, Sheldon, you probably in medical school had to memorize all these things. And so let's say they showed you the brain or something like that. So
something in neuroanatomy. Yeah.
So then you just see it and then you start saying, okay, this is what this is for and that's what this is for.
Yeah.
I lost you.
Arf?
You're muted.
Hear me? You hear me?
Yeah. Now we hear.
Yeah, I don't
Now
know
I
what
hear.
happened here. I don't know. Okay. So that's just what they would do. So now let's just make sure. Okay. Kol Shivasyam. All the 7 days that the Kohen Gadol was sequestered, they didn't stop him from eating anything he wanted or drinking anything he wanted. But Erev Yom Kippurim Imcha Shefa, but by night already, as it was getting dark on Erev Yom Kippur, that it's like a couple of hours before the actual onset of Yom Kippur, they didn't allow him to eat a lot. Why? Because maybe as a sheni, because eating brings upon sleep. In other words, that they did the Kohen Gadol basically had to stay up the whole night and the whole day of Yom Kippur, and they were scared to allow the Kohen Gadol to sleep for a moment because maybe he'll have a seminal discharge in his sleep, and therefore they didn't allow him to eat a lot on the Suda Samapsekis or maybe in the afternoon because that brings upon a person's sleep.
Was there a backup Kohen at this point?
Yeah, yes, there was a backup Kohen.
And did they do every single thing here with him too, including the sheep and reviewing and everything?
That's a very good question. One thing we did see that they didn't sequester him because it says Maskinu loy Kohen achar, so they didn't sequester him. Did they actually have him review the Yom Kippur service? Probably, I would say not, because usually the backup was even smarter and more of a Talmud Chacham than the original Kohen Gadol, because the original Kohen Gadol, as we're going to see in the Gemara, was bought for money. And therefore, the Chachamim said a backup Kohen Gadol in case, something happened to this one. But
okay.
yeah. So the Gemara
Interesting
says,
that the mitzvah aseh of eating a lot, which is on Yom Tet,
right,
it was not
suspended.
included. It was suspended for the Kohen Gadol. Everyone else in Am Yisrael,
Right,
except for the Kohen Gadol.
exactly. Well, the mitzvah is not to stuff yourself, but the mitzvah is to eat to not to leave yourself hungry.
Right, exactly.
But here they didn't allow him to eat a lot.
Mhm.
So the Gemara says, the Gemara is going back onto the question of okay, that they had to teach him the whole Pashas Achrei Mos and go over the service with him because maybe he forgot. So the Gemara says, Bishlam Hashem Shachach. It makes sense that he probably forgot L'chai. I can live with that. In other words, it's possible that he forgot a little nuance of a halacha. Elo Shalai Lama, they say to him, Kohen Gadol, let's go over Pashas Achrei Mos. Maybe you never learned this before. Can it be possible such a situation? Well, Tanya, we learned in the Brisa, who was the Kohen Gadol? It's this week's Parsha. By Kohen Gadol, Hagadol Echad. The Kohen Gadol was greater than his brothers. That's what the pasuk says. What does that mean? Gadol Me'echad, he's bigger than his brothers. Shei Gadol Me'echad, he's bigger than his brothers, than any Kohen. He's the best Kohen B'koyach. It means he has a lot of energy. Because in order to be a Kohen Gadol, you have to have a lot of energy, probably make a lot of speeches. B'noi, you have to have good looks. You have to be a handsome person. B'chachma, you have to be intelligent. Okay, and then v'oisher, you have to have wealth because you have to have charisma and be unbribable, basically. Acherim are not arguing, but what they're adding from the word be'echav means it could say kohen gadol. The word be'echav teaches us that they have to make him rich. Menayin, how would I know? Shim'ein loy, if he has no money, she'echav hakahanim megadol. The brothers that are kahanim have to make him rich. How do you know that? Talmud Loima, because the Torah says v'hakohen hagadol, the kohen is greater. How did he become greater? Me'achav, from his brothers. So all the kahanim make a collection for him so that he would be a wealthy person. Gadlehu mishalacha, make him wealthy from his brothers. It's interesting that the Sfardim, they pay their rabbanim a big sum of money. The rabbi himself is not a poor person. So it's an interesting thing we see here by the Kohen Gadol. So basically, so ends the kasha. The kasha is that how is it possible that they have a Kohen Gadol that never learned? Amar Rav Yosef answers like kasha. It's not difficult. Kam b'migdash rishon, kam b'migdash sheni. In the first base of Migdash, it was based on merit. That's how you got the Kohen Gadol. The Migdash Sheni, it was up for sale. The Omer of Asi said, Tarkaba de Dinre Aila le Morsa Babaisis, le Yane Malka, al the Oikvit le Yeshua Gamla Bakauna Ravrave. There was this lady, Morsa Baspaisis. She was a wealthy lady, an almana. She married in the second marriage, this Yeshua ben Gamla, and she paid 3 Tarkaba de Dinre. She paid 3 taras, 2 and kavas, 3 kavim of gold coins. She paid for it to Yane the king to install Yeshua ben Gamla, the Kahani Ravrave, to be the Kohen Gadol. So we see it was up for grabs over there. Therefore, it's possible in the big second base Migdash to have a Kohen Gadol that was not learned at all. Now,
well, we learned this, Bernard, that we had for a period of time, there were many Kohen Gadols because it basically was up for grabs and they paid for it. And they were, except the last one that was actually merit worthy was Shimon HaTzadik, right?
Right, but it doesn't mean that they didn't. Yeah, it could be. But here we're seeing something fascinating in the Mishnah that they say Shema loy lamadata. You never even open the Chumash.
Well,
So
sometimes it goes together with the people that pay for it. They're not Torah scholars either.
Right. Then why would they want the job? But yeah, I don't know. But there's another question over here that we find later on in a different Gemara that Yeshua ben Gamlo was a very big tzaddik. The Gemara says that he established yeshivas in Israel. He was the first one to establish Tanokish Beis Rabbim. So, and we say a lot of things about him. So how is it possible that over here in our Gemara we say that he was the way he got into it was his I don't know, his second marriage is the woman that he married bought the kuna for him. So they answered, Tosus asked this question, and he answers that to some people, I think the Ritva answers this, that grow into the job. Although at our Gemara he's not worthy of it, but once he got into the job of being Kohen Gadol, he became a tzaddik, and that could happen. So somebody gets in through nepotism, and then turns out to be okay. So it's not always how you got the job; it's how you manage with the job. Erev Yom Kippurim Shachar. So we say we brought all the animals to come before him: the cows, the rams, and the sheep. So the Gemara says, what about the goats? Because there were 2 goats that you made a lottery on. So the Gemara said, Tana in the Bryce, it says, Af Hasirim. They brought before him the goats. The Tana Didan, but our Mishnah, my Tana like Tana Hasirim. Why didn't our Tana in our Mishnah mention that they brought before him goats? So the Gemara says, since Kevin the Al Kaasi, since it becomes because of an Avera, Chol Shadaite, he's going to become very have weak mind. In other words, he'll feel bad. Why? Because he'll say to himself that, look, why are they bringing a goat? To be mechaper on the whole Jewish people. He's going to think about himself, how can I bring about a tshuva and a kapara for the entire Jewish people? So that's going to bring him to become sad. So we don't pass before him the goats. So the Gemara says, very interesting question. If that was correct, the cow that he brought was also an oila. And that was the par of Yom Kippur. The cow was also brought for the chet, for chatoim of his family. So the Gemara answers, par, the cow, even the olav al echavakanim, that was brought because of him and all his brothers that are kahanim, who dasi. That's what the point of the cow was. The echavakanim, regarding his brothers hakahanim, if he knows somebody did an avera, if somebody has something, made the yadale. The Kohen Gadol certainly knows about it. So umahadale b'tshuva. He's going to go and bring the rest, his brothers that are kahanim, bring them to do tshuva. So bringing the cow, he feels confident in bringing the cow because that's just for himself and for all other kahanim. That brings the kapara for all other kahanim. And if there are a couple of kahanim that need to do tshuva, the Kohen Gadol will have an influence on that person to do tshuva. Bekule Yisrael, but the goat, which is brought on behalf to bring kapara, forgiveness on the entire Jewish people, Layada, he doesn't know the entire Jewish people. How could he bring about a tshuva? Now, I'm pointing out to you that obviously the Kohen Gadol did not, there are thousands of kahanim. I don't think the Kohen Gadol knew all the kahanim, but somehow all the kahanim felt connected to him. It's almost like Hasidim to a Rebbe. The Rebbe doesn't know each and every one by name, but somehow they're connected, and somehow the Kohen Gadol has an influence on his brothers of the Kahanim, and he could feel that the Kohen Gadol could feel that through his service, he could cause an inspiration of tshuva in his brother's in his brother who is a Kohen. However, when it comes to Gans Klal Yisrael, he will have chalisha sadas, the Gemara says, he'll feel inadequate to bring about the kapara for Klal Yisrael, and therefore, we did not bring goats to pass before him because we didn't want the Kohen Gadol to feel inadequate right before Yom Kippur. Now the Gemara just says a statement about having family members know so much about you. Omer Ravina said, Haini da Amra Inchi, that's what people say. Ibar achsech de yale hava, if your nephew works for the IRS, okay, your nephew is a tax collector, chazeh, be careful, don't pass before him on the street, because your nephew knows more about you than anybody else he knows. So therefore, he's more likely to get you in trouble. That's an expression. So we apply that the Kohen Gadol knew better his brothers or Kahanim, and he felt that he could have a better inspiration on them to do tshuva than on the rest of Klal Yisrael. Next Gemara. Kol Shivasyam, in all 7 days, lo yahaya moinim. They didn't stop the Kohen Gadol from eating at all. You know, they wanted him to eat. Tanya, we learned in the Braysa, Rabbi Yehuda ben Nekoisa Oimer, and this is an odd name, Nekoisa. Rabbi Yehuda's son of Nekoisa says, Machilin oisois losois, they would give him flour, I guess, ubeitzim and eggs, kidei lemas misoy. They wanted him to have constipation. You wanted him to clear out his system. So they made this concoction with eggs and flour that would give him a weak stomach. So they wanted him to clear out, to go to the bathroom, so he would not have to go to the bathroom on Yom Kippur. So that's what Rabbi Yehuda ben Nekoisa said. So the Chachamim said that's not a good idea because eggs and flours are not good, because those foods bring him to have a nocturnal heat and a nocturnal emission, a seminal emission. So therefore, that's not a good idea to give him eggs and flour. Tanya, we learned in a brisa. Sumcha said in the name of Rameh, you're not allowed to give the kohen loy abi, not these three foods. Aleph, Beis, Yud. We'll see what that means. Ra'ami law and others say you don't give the kohen gadol abibb. Those four foods. And basically, the common thing of these foods is they bring a person to have a seminal emission. Yeshomin and others say af lo yain loven. Don't give him white wine. So the Gemara explains, loy abi, the following foods you don't give the kohen. Loy esrog, you don't give him an esrog. I don't know who eats esrog, but you don't give the kohen esrog to eat. Loy beitzim, and don't give him eggs. Loy yain yashin, and old wine. But Amila and others say, loy aleph abibi, you don't give the kohen those four foods. Loy esrog, you don't give him esrog. Loy beitzim, you don't give him eggs. Loy basa shomem, and not fatty meat. Loy yain yashin, old wine. Yesh yomim, and others say af lo yain yovim, and not you don't give him also white wine. The nesha yain lovim, white wine, maybe a suddenly tumah brings a person to have a seminal emission. That's what the Gemara says. And I want to point out to you that even with all these precautions, they needed not a special mace for the kohen gadol not to have a seminal mission on Yom Kippur. It seems that's what the Mishnah says in the Mishnayos Avos. Not in this week's parak, next week's parak. They need one of the nasim was that it never happened that the kohen gadol had a seminal emission. Despite all the precautions that we're taking, it still needed a miracle because the koyach of the satan, the force was so strong that it had the strength to bring the kohen gadol to a seminal emission. So we need like a special siyata d'shmaya that it doesn't happen. Tana Rabban, the rabbis taught zav. Zav is a type of seminal emission that's very different than regular shechva zera carry. Why? Rashi explains over here that, as you know, we've discussed this before, that zav is a sickness. I'm going to pull it down. Rashi, zav carry and zav bam.
We can't hear you.
Baruch.
I don't know what's happening, but I'll figure it out. Hello?
Yeah, we hear you.
Yeah,
I know. I don't know. Maybe I clicked something. I know what it is. I know exactly what it is. Hold on a second. It's a setting here that's probably aggressive. Okay. That's probably it. That's one of the. Okay. Now it's not going to happen. Okay. Anyway. Okay. So, now, how do you tell the difference between zav and carry? So, how do you tell the difference between semen and zav? So, zav, semen, Rashi says, is kaloivim beitza, like it's like the white of an egg. Hamuzeris, that is fertilized. Okay, that's the zav. It doesn't come. It's not stringy like semen. Shivasyam is kosher, is stringy. Kalev beitza, it looks like the eggs that we have she'ein muzeres that are not fertilized. Also, a zav is a leakage that even without an erection, a person gets that. So Rashi defines it over here. What's the difference between zav and a regular carry? Anyhow, what's the point? A zav, the only way for a zav to bring tomei is if he has these, to bring a carbon, he has to have it see it 3 times in 3 different days, right? And we have to make sure that he's seeing this zav, this emission, that you can't say that it came because of something else, because of a sickness or something like that, or food. If it came because of food, then he doesn't bring a carbon. So zav, we always assume we can say that he does not have to bring a carbon if you could hang that the reason why he saw this zav, this emission, is because he ate a lot of food. And any type of food. If he eats a lot of food, And then he has the zav. That's not a zav that requires that can be counted towards the 3 that you need to bring a carbon on. Elazar ben Pinchas, I'm a Mishum Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseira. Now, a zav, after you become a zav, you need to count 7 clean days. Not only clean from keri, but you have to be clean from any type of ziba, even if it comes by accident. Because if you do see it, then you have to restart the counting again. So therefore, a zav would be very careful not to eat the following foods during the time that he's trying to remain clean, because these things can accidentally bring him to see a zav emission. You don't give him chagbi and gabam. Not anything that could possibly bring him to carry. What is loy chagbi? Like cholov, you don't give him milk, like vina, like not cheese, like beitza, not eggs, like yayin, not wine. Because these possibly can make him have a ziva again during this pain that he wants to be totally clean. But like gabon, not gabon. What kind of food is gabon? Make grease and shell peel. That's type of this bean that's crushed and you soak it in water and you drink that water. That's the problem. Ubasa sham and fatty meat, rice and the fat of fish. So that's that. Now I want you to know that the Kohen Gadol was allowed to eat milk, cheese, and eggs. We only said he's not allowed to eat yain yoshan or esrog, but the Kohen Gadol, we didn't go so strict on him, But for the zav, he has to be totally clean. These are good advice to take these extra precautions. And then the Brisa says that a zav should not eat anything that possibly could bring in the day tumah. Like kol advar mein tumah, latuyamai. What will this include? What does this add on that we don't know? What kind of foods should the zav not eat? Latuye ha, it adds the ha de bottom. Chamisha the bottom. The Brisa says there are 5 things. Mevina so adam the day tumah can bring a person to have a seminal emission. 5 things. The elu these are the following 5 things. Hashum, garlic. We now go to Yud Chesam Beis. Shachlayim. Shachlayim is, I have here cress and the chalaglois. Chalaglois is per se, and vahabeitzim and eggs. The hagargir is, Rashi says, is arugula, and that's good to know. Arugula, very important food. And it's interesting that in the Roman times, arugula was used to treat ED, so to speak, because it has a lot of health benefits for that. And arugula was one of those foods that has a lot of health benefits in heart and other things like that. Now the Gemara is going to discuss a little bit about arugula. The pasuk says in Melachim Beis, a man from the field went to collect this herb called oiris, light. What is light? He picked garger. He picked arugula. So this man from the field went to collect light, which is another name for arugula. So then the question is, Amar Rabbi Yochanan said, Lama nikra shman oiris. Why would they call arugula light? Shemeiros eswanayim. It's very beneficial for the eyes. Again, I guess gives you clarity of vision. Amar Rav Huna described garger, arugula, if you could eat it. In other words, it's if you find enough, I guess if it's not dirty, try to eat it. Vim lav, if let's say it's too dirty and you can't eat it and you can't wash it off, just rub it on your eyes. It's that health benefits. It has a lot of health benefits, just even by rubbing it. Papa says, but only we're talking about arugula that was grown at the border of your field. In other words, it's away from everything else, so it maximized all its nutrients from the ground. Because if it grows too close to other vegetation, it's a weaker form of arugula. So the strongest form is the one at the edge of your field towards the border of your field. Then the Gemara continues. Amarav Gidol Amarav. Rav Gidol Amarav says, Achsanai, a guest in somebody's house, lo yoichal beitzim, should not eat eggs. Now, why shouldn't he eat eggs? So Rashi says, because it's possible by eating eggs, you're going to come day carry. You're going to have a carry besides the Isser, but you're going to have a seminal discharge. And then and the people that you're a guest by, you're going to degrade you by, they go to the bed sheets and they'll see your seminal discharge. So therefore, you'll be embarrassed by what you did, what happened. So therefore, you should not eat eggs. And then there's on the side here a pirush of Rabbeinu Chanano, who says over here, Shema Yira Keri, and you're going to get the sheet dirty, and the Yachshadehu Balabayas Al Ishto. And the owner of the house, your host, is going to think that you had relations with his wife. Very interesting. So that's why you should not eat eggs if you're a guest in somebody's house. Well, and you should not even sleep on the clothing of the balabas. Let's say he has no cover to give you, and he says, you know what, use my winter coat. Don't sleep on it. Why? Because maybe you'll have again a carry, and it'll be on his coat, and therefore Rashi says you must allow carry. You shouldn't find your discharge on his coat. Now comes a very fascinating Gemara. Rav, the holy Amora Rav, he was so concerned when he traveled alone, and he was so concerned being without a wife. He mikla ledarshish, when he would get to the city of Darshish, and he was alone, machris, he would call out, man hab yoima, who wants to marry me for a day? In other words, I want to marry a woman while I'm staying in this city of Darshish, so at least I'm married over here, and then I'm going to divorce her when I go home. You see, because he wanted to be holy, so therefore he wanted to be a married person. Rav Nachman kad nikla l'shachansiv machriz. When he got to the city of Shechansiv, he would also call out, man havya l'yomin, who wants to marry me for a day? It doesn't mean just for a day. It means the few days that I'm here, I need to be a married person. My wife is back home with the kids. If I'm going to be here for a couple of days, I need to have a woman that's going to call herself my wife while I'm staying here, and then I'm going to divorce her. Now, this is a very fascinating statement of what he just said, because how is it that they would only in these places they would do it? These holy Amoraim, they couldn't be there a few days without being married. So the Ben Ishchai, the Ben Yehoyada says that in these places, in the city of Darshish, in the city of Shechansiv, the people had a custom to get married late. 30 years old or 40 years old, they got married. And he wanted to show the value of marriage, that a person should get married young. So to teach them that point, he said, even if I'm here for a few days without my wife, I want to be married. So let me have a marriage partner for those 2 days. That's why Rav did it when he only came to the city of Darshish. And that's why Rav Nachman did it only when he came to Shechansiv, to encourage the people how important it is to marry and that they should get married younger. So the Gemara asks the question, how are you allowed to marry somebody for a day? But time we learned in the Brisa, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Oima, Vayisa Adam Isha ben Medinazu. You're not allowed to marry somebody in one country, and then go marry somebody else in another country. And they didn't have communications like now, because maybe you'll have children from both, and then maybe the two children that you have from each of your wives in different parts of the world, and they'll come and marry each other. And then a brother possibly marry a sister. And then of course they'll bring mamzeris into the world. That's what the pasuk says in Molar Zima. There'll be znus. So how could Rav and Rav Nachman go to another place of the world? They're not with their wives and say, let's get married to somebody, a stranger. So Amri, the Chachamim Rabbanan answered. The Amri, the Talmud answers, Rabbanan kol isluhu. The rabbis had the koil. In other words, it's well known who they're going to marry. So therefore, it's not something lost in the crowd. Everybody will know who Rav's two wives was, or who Rav Nachman's wives were. So it's not a problem. So okay, but how could he marry her in about 1 second? He walked into the city and says, "I need a wife. Let me marry somebody." How could you do that? So Rava said, if you ask somebody to marry you and she acquiesces, she agrees, Tzricha leishiv shiva nikiyim. You can't marry right away. You have to wait 7 nikiyim. Now, why do you have to wait 7 nikiyim? Because even though you know she went to the mikvah, and even though you know she went to nida, in those days, let's say a basula, an unmarried woman went to the mikvah, but even though there's a chashash and the excitement of somebody proposing to her will cause her to see dam chimud, it's called, and therefore she has to wait shiva nikiyim, no matter what. You can't marry somebody right after the proposal. You have to wait at least 7 clean days. So therefore, the question over here is that how is Rav, as soon as he walked into the town, he says, I need somebody to marry, and he married somebody right there and there without waiting the 7 days. And for the Gemara, Rabbanim, I do have a maidulu mikdam, I do have a maidul. They notified when they were coming to the town. Mikdam hamem makadre mishadre shluche. Before they came, they would send the messenger that they're coming, and that they prepare the wife weeks before that. The weeks before Rav arrived, they already knew who his wife was, so that he could get married. So actually, she did wait 7 nikiyim. The Ibay said, if you want, they could answer Yehudi Have Miachtalahu. It wasn't the wife that he actually had relations with. It was just dedicated as a wife, right? So therefore he was you can't compare somebody who has bread in his basket to somebody who doesn't have bread in his basket. Even though Rav never had relations with this woman, the fact is that he was called a married person. That was enough to consider him to take away the taiva of looking at other women, and therefore that's when he got married. That's called pas pasali. The Taisus that deals with a question that if it's his wife and he's doesn't have to plan to have relations with her, right? If you don't plan to have relations with your wife, right? You just married her and that didn't have plan to have relations, then he's not allowed to be together with her. That's what the Taisus asks. You're not allowed to be a person, let's say, gets married, and his wife tells him he's a nida, and they never had relations with each other. They have to sleep in separate rooms. You see, I'm pointing. If a woman's wife, you just got married, and she tells you she became a nida, and you didn't do bia, then hu yashim bein hanashim, ishto yishenu bein hanashim. Since they're not used to each other, they have to sleep in separate rooms.
Lost you.
Baruch,
Can't hear.
I know you hear me. Hello? Yeah. So Rav, I gotta shut this down. Anyway, you hear me, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
I'm sorry.
yeah,
Anyway, so the question is that Rav, how is he allowed to how is he allowed to be with this woman? How is he allowed to be with this woman if he's not planning to have relations with her? If she's a nida, because again, she becomes a nida because she's excited about getting married. She really has to wait shiva nikiyah. So Taisus learns that he never even married her in the first place. He was just dedicated that if he wanted to get married to her, he could get married to her, like, turn around and get ready for it. But it doesn't mean that he actually did marry her. Anyway,
What was the point?
the point was to be called a married woman, married man, and therefore that would take away the taiva that he would have for other women. So that was the point. He wanted to remain kaddish. So that's why Rav, as soon as he walked into the city, he asked, Man hava v'yomer, who's going to be married to me for a day? I need a woman for a day. Or for a few days that I'm here, I need to be married. And women would line up and he would get married. I guess, according to Rashi, he actually did get married for a few days that he was here, and then he would divorce her. Anyway,
I would think, knowing that there is a woman just waiting and he could say, let's, get married, might give him more of a taiva, as opposed to having to first find somebody and date the person and whatever. She's just in the wings waiting. I would think
Right.
it would be actually opposite.
right. So that could be that could be the disagreement between the Ri and the Rashi. Rashi learns he actually married her, and according to the first teretz, there was no problem. He had relations with her. According to the first teretz, he actually married her. As soon as he walked in, he married her. That day he walked in. You're supposed to wait Shiva Nikiyim. The girl knew that he was coming, so there's no dam chimud over there. She's not in need, not a problem. So as soon as he walked in, he actually married her. The second teretz is he married her but never had relations with her. But the fact that he married her and she's right there, and like you want it, that's maybe what Tysus is about. They're married, but they can't have relations. They have to wait 7 days. But the fact that he's already married, he really felt at ease. Hard to understand. One more Mishnah. I just want to point out to you, very simple. Look at this picture. This is the Kohen Gadol taking a handful of the powdered ketoris, and it had to be exactly his handful full. That's called maloi chafna of ketoris, of the powdered special ingredients for the ketoris, the incense. And then in the shovel they had the coals. And basically he would walk in with one hand holding the shovel with the hot coals and one hand holding the ketoris. Now, then he would walk into with the oren, the kodesh kedoshim, and somehow he had to hold the spoon in his teeth. He would lower and turn the spoon over into his hand, so he caught all the powder into his two hands. He could not let one drop fall on the floor. That's why this is the hardest job of the whole Kohen Gadol, the whole service in the Beis Hamikdash. When I ask you what is the hardest job, is being able, you only have two hands, but actually you need three hands to be able to turn over the spoons into your two hands over here. So he had to do it with his mouth. Anyway, and then afterwards he poured the powder onto the coals, and that made a big smoke. Now, the tzedukim that lived during the time of the second Beis Hamikdash, they felt that you should pour the incense on the ketoras before you go into the kodesh kedoshim. So that's what the Mishnah says. Masru ziknei bezdin ziknei kahuna. After the elders of the bezdin gave him over to the elders of the kahuna. And the kohanim, the old kohanim would take the kohen gadol to the house of Aptinis. It was a place in the Beis Hamikdash, opposite of where he was staying. And they made a shvua, an oath. Then after the oath, everybody parted ways. What was the oath about? They said to him, Ishi kohen gadol, Master kohen gadol, we are from Bezdin, and you are the messenger and the shliach and the messenger of Bezdin. Mashbian al ani alecha. We make you swear in the name of the God, so to speak, that who rested his presence in this house. You're not going to change one iota what we're telling you. Pour the incense only after you get into the kodesh kedoshim, not before. So that because they were choshid that maybe he's a tzeduki. Who pirish ubaychet. Generally he would move away and cry because they were choshid b'ksher be a tzeduki. The heim pirish ubaychet, they moved away and cried because they had to do what they had to do and bring this uncomfortable topic up in front of him. If now the Mishnah teaches us, what did he do? What did he do at night after davening Mariv on Yom Kippur? Now up to Mariv and Yom Kippur. So after Mariv, if he was an intelligent person, doiresh, he would give speeches that night because he would come up with Torahs, keep his mind active. Vim lav, Talmidei Chacham darshan front. Then they had other speakers come in and give him speeches. They wanted to keep his mind active. If he was not capable of hearing Torah, so vim rogalikros, if he knew how to read Chumash or Tanakh, Koire, they would read. Vim lav, Koire lefonov, they would read before him. And what would they read before him? What would they make him read? So the Mishnah says, Be'iyah of Ezra of Divrei Yomim. They would read Iyah and Ezra and Divrei Yomim. Those are the books that they would read for him because that motivated and inspired him, put him into a serious mood. Zechariah ben Kavuta Leimer, Zechariah ben Kavuta says, "Pa'amim harbe karisha l'fana b'dinyo." Many times I was the person that had to read for the Kohen Gadol, and we would learn together Sefer Daniel on the night of Yom Kippur. So it gives you an idea of that who the Kohen Gadol was. That at times that he didn't know any of the Tanakh or anything like that, then they would have to read things before him, in order to make sure that he stayed up the whole night and not have any seminal discharge, Chas v'shalom, on the night of Yom Kippur. So very interesting Gemara about today.
Very interesting. You could kind of visualize what's going on with what's happening. And it's amazing how Chazal does it, that they have to make the details really for a person like myself, thousands of years later, to visualize what happened in the Beis HaMikdash. Otherwise, you would probably just think yourself what's going on, but you could actually like a play-by-play almost what's happening.
Yeah, and I find it fascinating that they knew the health benefits of food. They had to know what brings a person to, what was the Viagra of those days.
I just Googled it, arugula, and it does say ED, and it does say eyesight.
It does say eyesight. I didn't see eyesight.
It gives like 10 benefits, but those are 2 of them.
Right.
Yeah.
So all these things, if a person has trouble having carry, the Gemara is giving it to you right over here. What the things, what diet you should have, and from
amazing.
What the Kohen Gadol is not supposed to eat, or a Zav is not supposed to eat.
Wow.
Fascinating over here.
It's fascinating. Okay.
And then the Rav, I find it fascinating. I don't know. I'm afraid to tell my wife if I went to somewhere else, and I would say I need to marry somebody for a day. When he went away for a business trip, he says,
I suggest you don't do that.
I don't do that. Okay, that's why Talmud is for us. All right, we should hear good news from each other.
Amen.
And have a good. I could say a good Shabbos, and may and their full shalom for everybody in their.
Amen.
Okay, good enough.
Yeah.